You decided to start, but something in you hasn't moved. You have the plan, you have the time, a small heaviness in your chest, and instead of starting, you reach for your phone. Again, you tell yourself, I'll start in a minute, but you and I both know that minute never comes. It is not a character flaw you've spent years failing to correct. You are responding exactly the way your brain was trained to respond. Your brain is under a protective signal, a signal never designed to run against a deadline. But the question is, why does your brain hesitate to start the things that matter most? Dr. Timothy Peichel spent over 2 decades at Carleton University, studying why intelligent, capable people who genuinely want to do the work still cannot make themselves begin. I kept coming back to his findings because, honestly, they reframed something I thought I understood: my own behavior. What he found is this: procrastination is not a time management problem. It never was. It is an emotional regulation problem. Your brain is not failing to manage your schedule. It is successfully managing your discomfort. Those are 2 completely different problems, with 2 completely different overrides. You tell yourself there's just one more thing to do first. You get the coffee, you clear the space, you make sure everything feels right. But the moment you actually have to begin, you flinch. Suddenly something else feels urgent. A chore you ignored all week, a notification that suddenly matters. One more thing you need to check first. You are moving constantly, but never in the direction that matters. You were very busy doing nothing at all. You are not procrastinating because you are lazy. You are procrastinating because your brain has registered this task as a threat, and avoidance is the oldest survival response the human body knows. Your threat reflex has been running one calculation since you decided to start. It sounds like this matters too much. If you start, you might fail. And if you fail at something that matters this much, that is not just a failure. That is evidence. Evidence about who you are. Wait, not yet. You'll be more ready tomorrow. It has been sending that message on a loop. And every time you postpone starting, it registers that as a successful outcome. It reinforces, it deepens. And what does it cost you every time that loop runs? Every time the avoidance loop runs, the pathway strengthens. The threat reflex fires faster next time. The resistance to beginning builds higher, not because you are getting weaker, because the pattern is getting stronger. You are not behind on your work. You are behind in interrupting a reflex that has been practiced longer than you have. You're not avoiding the task. You're avoiding the predicted pain of starting it. So, if this reflex trained itself through repetition, through every tab you closed, every start you postponed, every moment you chose the relief of avoidance over the discomfort of beginning. So how can we override this reflex signal? What happens when you give it a different input before the threat has time to register? The override is embarrassingly simple. Not a productivity system, not a morning routine, not a new relationship with your goals. One input, applied before the reflex fires. Peter Gollwitzer at New York University spent years studying what he called implementation intentions, the specific moment a person decides not just what they will do, but where and when they will begin. His meta-analysis across 94 independent studies found that people who formed a single specific micro-commitment, not a goal, not a plan, a micro-action, were significantly more likely to follow through than those who held the same intention without it. The goal did not change. The bar to entry changed. Your brain does not resist tasks. Your brain resists tasks that have not been given a specific starting signal yet. There is a name for what your brain is waiting for. It's called dopamine tagging. Before your brain releases the signal that makes starting feel safe, it needs evidence. Evidence that starting this type of task in this location at this time did not produce the threat it predicted. The override doesn't give your brain a goal. It gives your brain a tag. Step 1. Define the smallest action that counts as starting. Not the full task. Not even half of it. Just the first physical movement toward it. One movement. One step. 1 second of contact. That's it. That is the entire commitment. You do not have to continue. You do not have to do it well. You do not have to be ready. You only have to give your brain evidence. that the first contact did not produce the threat it predicted. You're very close now. The bar is that low on purpose. Step 2 is to do it at the same time, in the same place, for 5 consecutive days. Not because routine is some self-help concept, but because your limbic response retags a previously threatening input as neutral through repeated exposure at a consistent environmental cue. The location becomes the signal. The time becomes the signal. Before the task even begins, your brain has already started receiving the tag. Now you might be thinking, this isn't my problem. I don't avoid things. I research. I plan. I prepare before I begin. That's not procrastination. That's diligence. But your threat reflex found a costume. There is a name for this. It's called phantom progress. Phantom progress is what happens when the brain's reward system fires for preparation behavior as a full substitute for execution. You feel productive. The dopamine response is genuine. The output, however, is not. You might spend 3 hours preparing for the thing you were supposed to start. Your brain registers all 3 hours as meaningful work. And your brain isn't wrong. It received real reward signals throughout. But in the end, nothing was built. Nothing was started. Nothing exists that did not exist 3 hours ago. The threat reflex dressed itself as diligence. And every day, you thanked it for working so hard. The most thoroughly prepared people have done the least with the most potential. Not because they lacked intelligence, not because they lacked ability. It's because phantom progress quietly removed every reason to actually begin. The preparation wasn't the path to starting. The preparation was the procrastination. Your brain just gave it a more respectable name. The fact that you are still watching this video right now, instead of doing the thing you opened your laptop to do before you ended up here, well, that is the threat reflex. You are inside it right now. This video might even be, well-researched phantom progress, I don't know. Maybe that's exactly why you clicked. You now have a name for it. Threat reflex, dopamine tagging, phantom progress. These aren't metaphors. They aren't motivational reframes. They are biological mechanisms that have been running your behavior without your awareness. Naming a threat doesn't eliminate it overnight. But the anterior cingulate cortex, that's the part of your brain that manages the conflict between what you intend and what you do, processes a labeled threat differently than an unnamed one. The loop does not survive being named. That's not inspiration. That is neuroscience. If this mapped something you've felt, the next video goes deeper into the override.